Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to be doing a last man standing battle royale style comparison video between AutoHDR, FOTELLO, and human editors. I'm going to be focusing mostly on AutoHDR and FOTELLO, but I will be filling in the human part based off of my experiences with outsourcers my entire over 10-year career. Now, what I'm going to be doing here in regards to recording and comparing these two softwares is using this spreadsheet here and giving 3 points to the person in first, 2 points to the person in second, and 1 point to the last player. So there at the end, we'll have a total and we'll have a clear winner that is quantified based off of several categories. The first being price, the others being verticals, window pulls, and color casting. This is the single most important 3 sections that you have to have in order to be even considered as a quality editor. They're the expectations of the industry, and we've got to get them right. Apart from that, I've broke them down into smaller categories. We're going to compare exteriors, interiors, masking, color accuracy, difficult colors, wood tones, hallucinating. That's something that an AI can do when it's running through its model. Consistency, reliability, speed, text, and detail. Sometimes if there's text or a certain type of detail in a surface, it can get a little bit blurry. Revision. Can you revise these photos easily? Sky replacement. Are they quality? Is it dirty? Is it sloppy? Twilight conversion. And then we have the user experience and the company itself. So I'm going to speak to all of that. And then at the end, when I compare all 3 of these, I'm also going to compare just AutoHDR and FOTELLO. This will be a little bit of a long video, but it will be extensive, and we will come out with a clear winner here. Now, I went ahead and did this on FOTELLO and AutoHDR, and I did 3 or several different edits. So just on AutoHDR here, we can see that I did a wood tone test, sky replacement test, twilight conversion test, realistic test. I'm actually going to call that the luxury test. Funky color test, and easy test. Without further ado, let's hop in to the test. And we're just going to go in alphabetical order here, starting with AutoHDR. So this is what AutoHDR has on the easy test. And the original photos had a white top with a gray wall. And this was something I virtual staged. We'll come back to that later. But here are the images, and looking at this, you can see that it's not bad. It looks pretty clean. You don't see too many mistakes, but this is the easy test. We're having a very clear, mostly vacant home that's well staged. We're having no difficult colors, and it's very well lit. That being said, you can start seeing this image, if I'm going to complain about something, is a little bit foggy, almost like the lens is dirty here on the left side, and we are seeing plenty of color casting in the floors. The window pulls are pretty decent. I know that I kind of criticized them in the original test, but it does seem like they've improved the window slightly. But I am still seeing some inconsistency here in the colors of the walls. And this is an easy test. This is gray walls, but I really can't tell the difference between the ceiling that looks pretty gray and it should be white, and the walls that look white but should be gray. And then we're also seeing that this tone over here above the cabinets is definitely different above the cabinet over here. Now that's being a little bit picky. I'm not a pixel pincher myself, but this is just observations. It also looks that a lot of this image has just been desaturated. And we also see that back here, once again, it's a little bit out of focus. That might be because my employee here, I know he shoots handheld, so that might be that reason why. But here is another photo here. We're seeing color casting on top of the countertops, and I know that that shouldn't be there. But also everything else just looks like it was turned to a black and white image with color selection around the chimney. We'll see how things go besides that. This room, once again, should be gray wall, but it looks the same as the ceiling or very similar. And I'm just going to keep flipping through. You guys get the idea here. I will say that this window pull isn't AutoHDR's fault. That's a dirty window, so no fault there. And I will say that we got some dust spots on our lenses, but that is the only. So here we are also seeing some color casting from this room into the bathroom. But like I said, very easy shoot here. This is the exterior of the home. I do find that AutoHDR gets a very nice natural look to their exteriors, but they also replace the skies. I prefer to have the natural skies that I shoot with unless it's a gray sky. So I would prefer, and I didn't see it, maybe I missed it, that I would prefer if AutoHDR didn't replace the skies automatically. So anyway, this is the exteriors we get. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the exteriors that I can tell. The masking around the trees, you can see a little bit of loss of detail in the trees and a little bit of kind of like masking half 50% opacity of things, but also floating artifacts from where the leaves and the branches were. That is not ideal. A lot of human outsourcers, though, will do that as well. And then we're also seeing on the exteriors some desaturated areas where the masking didn't keep it consistent. And I can also tell this is a little bit desaturated. So it's not perfect, but I will say that we could mostly fix this with a simple gradient mask sliding that way. Now, one thing that we're looking for, a lot of people miss this when they're critiquing AIs, is like, oh, this is perfect and it's exactly the way I want it without having to touch it. The whole idea of having an AI or outsourced editor is so that all the time-consuming things are completely done. And the time-consuming things are everything that's not a global adjustment. A global adjustment is something you can just go to exposure, contrast, something like that, and change a slider. A local adjustment or a more intensive edit would be you're having to open it up in Photoshop, you're having to add a mask, you're having to adjust it with layers. Those are really local adjustments, and they can create lots of time-intensive edits, especially when you're hand blending images by doing window pulls and that sort of thing. So if we can get an even exposure that has the accurate information, that is what we're looking for when we're outsourcing our images. And then from that point, we can add our own little touch, and it should be as simple as having our own little preset where we can say, hey, just make this a little bit more light and airy, dark and moody, whatever your guys' presets or personal look is. But the whole idea of this is that we're using some sort of tool to remove all of the bad stuff, the color casting, the window pulls, and the verticals, as I said at the beginning. So that's how you really need to look at these things. Anyway, so this is the AutoHDR. Let's go ahead and look now at the FOTELLO version. And once again, this is the easy test. We'll be getting into more later. And hopefully you guys can see that the gray walls here are immediately apparent versus the white skies. And it doesn't look like this whole thing has been whitewashed. It has actually been colored, even though it's mostly a grayscale room. Now, we are seeing a little bit of color casting here on this area. But once again, you can tell that, hey, this wall color is completely different from what we saw in AutoHDR. Window pulls here are super quality, and there's no inconsistency in the color tones on this side of the room compared to the rest of the room. All right. The way this house is, I would say that this does look like this is kind of like a color isolated chimney. It's weird that they put brick in here, but it doesn't look like AutoHDR made a mistake there. It's just the color of the house. But notice how all of this is very consistent. This is the photo that I kind of picked on with AutoHDR. Let's go ahead and just go back to AutoHDR and review that photo here. You can see that there's, like, first of all, the ceiling and the wall are a lot closer together, and there's some patchiness. But the window pull is pretty natural. I'm happy with that. Moving back now to the FOTELLO edits, we can see that this is a lot more even. And there's a lot less color casting here. The window pulls also, I would say the window pulls are comparable, but I'm not seeing too much here. There is something strange going on with this countertop. The AutoHDR was a little bit more orange than this, but Fotello also has a little bit of orange on the countertop, which makes me think it might be the countertop itself. But we're seeing a lot of consistency here, very even colors in the walls. We are seeing a little bit of a color difference here in the bathrooms. And I'm actually going to give you guys all the photos here in the description for you to compare yourselves. Now, one big difference I do see between AutoHDR and Fotello is the textures in Fotello on things like marble and brick can get a little bit soft or fuzzy. So this brick should be super crisp, right? But we're seeing some definite fuzziness here in the bricks. And this is consistent throughout a lot of the exterior shots. I would also say that the brick is a little bit more red and a little bit oversaturated. One thing I do like, though, is that I had the ability to turn off sky replacements. And the reason why I like this is it looks a lot more natural, but also you don't get floating branches and leaves and other things when you're shooting. So just flipping through this real quick, this isn't too hard to do, but I am going to point out all the times there's a little bit of fuzziness in the textures if you're looking at the detail. Now, I have been using Fotello and delivering these as is and haven't been getting any complaints, but this is exactly how it looks like downloading out of the software. So going back here to the comparison, right now I would say that the verticals and everything else are pretty even across all three, and I'm going to just fill this in later, but I'm just going to talk about it now. The window pulls, I would say, are pretty even, but the color casting is where Fotello really comes in strong. I'm going to give them a 3 for the best, and I would say AutoHDR is doing the same as a pretty bad human editor that I wouldn't hire. So I'm going to give them a 1, and human editor is going to come in at 2 above color casting. And these 3 are all really, really important, but I would say the verticals and the window pulls are all the same, so I'm going to give them all the same rating here, because I believe it's a tie on the window pulls and the verticals, but the color casting is where Fotello really pulls ahead, and they pull ahead by a large margin, which is really, really important. On the exteriors, we're going to come back to this in the interiors, but like I said, I'm going to fill this all in later. And guys, this is going to be a pretty intensive review here, just so you guys can see this and judge for yourself. All right, so now we're going to go to a funky color test. So if you guys have done real estate photography for any number of years, you know that conditions are not always ideal. So you'll run into a house that is not well lit, or the light bulbs are all different colors, and then of course the wall colors are different. So we're going to be doing AutoHDR first, and we're seeing here that AutoHDR is still having some trouble keeping the color in any room that has like a grayish or beige. They tend to desaturate areas that shouldn't be desaturated, and all of the walls are really patchy. So we can see all sorts of patchiness throughout the wall here, and this isn't even a funky color wall. And it continues to do that throughout the shoot. I'm just going to flip through these. You guys can pause and slow down. I also chose to do this a little bit of a messy house because not all homes are easy to mask and clean. This window here is cracked. The seal is broken, so that's not the AI software fault. But notice that the wall color and evenness is just all over the place. Window pulls are strong, verticals are strong, but the real killer here, and this is one of the 3 most important industry expectations, is wall color. And then here we're starting getting a little bit of a funky color, but it's not that funky. A blue like this, I think, is a very good color. But patchy, it's turning like white yellowish here. The whole thing looks pretty foggy. Moving on to other colors. This color is pretty accurate, but still unevenness and waviness throughout the whole thing. And then the whole image seems to be have like a mist over the lens. This is pretty accurate to the color that we shot, so not bad there. And this one is also pretty accurate. Ironically, this one is less patchy than the normal wall that we were shooting in the first room, but the consistency really is all over the place. And then here we We have the same room, but a different side of the room. But these colors are completely different. We have almost like a purplish pink, and this one we're really getting more of a opaque white pink. And this one is more of a grayish wall, like between beige and gray, maybe even a yellow. But once again, the wall color between the two photos are different. And yeah, guys, we don't shoot all beautiful properties here. This is a chair on top of a couch. But also, one thing I don't love is the fact that it looks like they're replacing the skies here out the window. And I find that it does create artifacts, floating artifacts, and halo effects, where if you didn't replace the sky, it wouldn't appear there at all. So anyway, that is a quick look at the funky color test. The exteriors here, though, I will say, once again, AutoHDR is getting really solid exteriors. The brick isn't oversaturated. The color isn't unnatural. So once it has a lot of sunlight, then AutoHDR seems to do a pretty good job. Let's look at this same test by Fotello, and we're going to go through this. All right, so this is the house looking at the... First of all, you can tell very quickly that the color is a lot more accurate and very even. I'm happy with the verticals as well on this, and no matter how much the color changes, between different areas of the room, we have sunlight coming in the window here, and then we also have this weird like tungsten / fluorescent light, I'm not sure, coming out of the bathroom. Despite all of that, all of the color is super even. I do see a little patch under here that's a little bit of a different color, but compared to AutoHDR, this is, worlds better. And I'm noticing the detail a lot more in the cabinets here. I want to double check that to make sure it's not hallucinating that. Let's double check the AutoHDR kitchen. Yeah, so it's there in the AutoHDR there as well. That's not a hallucination by Fotello. So moving on here with the test. That's a really weird wood. All right, so this is the first funky color room. And you remember with AutoHDR, it was super patchy. It is a different color than AutoHDR, but this is accurate to what we shot. I will say, though, the color is slightly different between these two photos. However, I will say that this is an easy fix. You select a color picker in the Lightroom and the hue specifically, and you just adjust it slightly so that it matches. The problem with AutoHDR is that it was so patchy, it's an almost impossible repair where you're going to have to try to even out all of the paint. So like I said, we're looking for global adjustments. This is a lot cleaner. There's no fuzziness going on with the room. And this is two different bathrooms. And this purple is exactly a lot more purple. And that's accurate. This vertical isn't as solid as the AutoHDR, but that's once again a click of the button. The most important thing is we need is the color. And between these two images, look at this. The colors are identical. The color of the curtains, the walls, all of this is exactly as it should be. And then we're going into this room as well. Notice the colors between these walls are perfect. And this is where AutoHDR really needs to improve a lot. Because if I were to deliver jobs with AutoHDR with these inconsistent colors, I would get a lot of angry and upset clients. So it's really not okay. And once again, the sky replacements here, since I have them turned off, the window pulls are a lot less hazy and halo-y. So that's something you're going to avoid when you're not replacing your skies. Anyway, that is the funky color test. But a quick look at the exteriors here. Out of the software, Fotello does seem to oversaturate their reds even on the exterior images. And this should be an easy edit for the software, so this needs to be adjusted. So AutoHDR is delivering, in my opinion, better exteriors. This is a global adjustment that you have to do with Fotello. It's not a local adjustment, so I can very easily just reduce the reds or reduce the saturation and be fine. And that's what we do when we deliver with Fotello. But I have to give it to AutoHDR as it is. They do have better exteriors that I'm seeing so far in the test. Moving on, luxury edit. This is what I called the realistic edit in the software, but I'm renaming it luxury because this is, a nicer house. So first of all, we're going to look at all these exteriors. It's a brick house. It looks like a brick house, as it should. One thing I don't love, though, is the automatic sky replacements. I'm going to double check to see if we can replace these. And we're moving in around here, and this is the interiors. So AutoHDR has been having trouble with consistency of the wall color and retaining color in grays. And this house has a lot of grayish and beige. We're seeing a little bit of patchiness, but I will say it's much better than the other houses we've seen so far. And like this is definitely lighter than this over here, but this time it's even, it's believable, it's natural. And also the window pulls are looking really nice, where we have all of the window panes nice, white and crisp. And then we're coming into this room here, the grand room, and all of the woodworking here is white, and then the walls are pretty, they may not be completely accurate, but it's evened and it looks natural. A client wouldn't complain about this. And we're also getting pretty good window pulls where the window panes are masked, at least most of them. I am noticing a little bit of a halo effect. For those who like to pixel pinch a little bit, you will stand out and notice that enough to where I notice it. And then moving on here, I'm just going to flip through quickly because AutoHDR is doing a pretty decent job here. At least this is the best it's done so far. If it were to do this well on all of the shoots, I would, probably recommend AutoHDR as an option. But the problem is we've done 2 different shoots so far, one of them being an easy test. And here's another thing. So here we're looking at the living area and dining, at least the breakfast nook here from the kitchen. And then we're moving just a few feet, and the color has completely changed. Now, this is a global adjustment we can make by just adjusting a few sliders, but I'm not sure if FOTELLO would have made this mistake. And that means the world, because not having to make those stop and make those adjustments or miss those photos is going to be, it's definitely going to win my business over the others. All right, and I do love the fact that it did not correct for verticals here when it shouldn't have. So that is a good bonus. And we're just going to keep moving on here, flipping through a lot of this house. And like I said, guys, I just gave, all right. So here's a mistake that another mistake that AutoHDR is making. This is if I remember, a pale blue or a gray blue, and they've just removed all the color from it completely. And we're also seeing a lot of color casting on the walls here, where we're seeing a little bit of a purple hue on the reflection of the window and a strong yellow. We're going to come back to see, at least they've got the color consistent between these 2 shots, but it is the same room there. And we also have a funky color here. This is an extremely strong red. I'm not sure why you would paint a theater room red, because it distract from the actual film. But they did a pretty decent job. It is turning more of a purple here, though. If I was to send this off to a human editor, who knows what they would have done with it. And then we're once again just getting to some color shade inconsistency between these 2 areas of the room here, where this was, pretty dark because of the bright window, but because of all the sunlight, it really should have nailed it a lot easier. And then we have a room downstairs, not too important. Exteriors, once again, looking strong with AutoHDR, and they are replacing the skies on their own, and I'm not seeing too many issues there. So exteriors are strong with AutoHDR. Let's look at the luxury edit with FOTELLO, and you'll immediately notice that the masking and the color here is all pretty good. One thing that I did notice, though, with FOTELLO, on these pillars, seemed like it was deciding if they were white or beige, and sometimes it would decide that they were beige, and sometimes it would decide they were white. These are white, okay? So this is going to be one thing that FOTELLO has missed on an interior. I would say that is the first thing that it has missed on an interior. But the rest of these images, look how crisp that it doesn't miss a single square here. It is very intelligent when it comes to trim and retaining color in these rooms. And once again, this is what I'm talking about, where we do have white pillars. They should be white, but these pillars on the side are beige. So this is a miss on that part of FOTELLO, but the rest of these is just super even. The window panes are coming in super nice. There's not as much halo effects with the window pulls either, since I didn't do sky replacement. But all of this is coming out a lot more crisp. It looks like the color was faded a little bit between those two images. And we're also seeing some similarities where, for some reason, this upper window, both AutoHDR and Fotello didn't catch. But just moving on through here, I want to compare this kitchen here specifically. So the colors are super even. We're not getting too much color casting even in the reflection of the windows here. And moving on to this shot, we want to see if so this is where Fotello is really doing a good job. And both AutoHDR and Fotello, by the way, they automatically replace the TVs with a gradient, which is a really nice touch. It's amazing what they're able to accomplish. But yeah, so this looks completely consistent, and I wouldn't have to do any global adjustments here. The consistency and the intelligence of Fotello of their colors is absolutely mind-boggling. It must have been a real tough nut to crack because even after AutoHDR's second release, I'm not seeing that they've solved that issue. All right, and just moving on, so you also see a big difference in the colors of the walls here, and this is accurate, but they're still not missing. It's a little bit faded in between that one crack there, but all of these colors are super accurate, and they don't miss the details, even in a complex room like this. So good job to Fotello for that. There's no unnatural textures either. I have noticed in the past that this type of texture in marble, Fotello would have a little bit of a haze on. It looks like they've improved that significantly, but I do see it sometimes on the brick. And it looks like, honestly, Fotello actually missed this gray area as it was a blue. So both Fotello and AutoHDR missed that. Interesting. And I feel like I should double check the raws here. It's going to take too long. It was definitely a blue room. So the fact that both of them missed it, that's a rare miss for Fotello. This is accurate. Let's check this. Okay, and this is the room that was super red, a super strong red. This is accurate to the super strong red. And they got it consistent here as well in the different corner there. So, and then this room is just spot on with Fotello. So when Fotello is not 100% accurate, they're still very accurate most of the time. So we're seeing some big improvements there. Let's pull up the test folder here with the sky replacements. Okay, so sky replacements. All of these shots were taken during a gray sky day. Let's see how the sky replacements have worked with this. The number one thing we're looking for, by the way, with sky replacements, we want to make sure that there's no bleeding on the gutters or on these white parts of the houses. And we did 3 or 4 shoots this day. And I pulled all the exteriors from this cloudy day, and we're gonna judge this. So we want to make sure that there's not too many floating artifacts between the trees. We want to make sure the skies look realistic. We're hoping not too many halos around the trees, and we don't want any bleeding on any of the parts of the image that shouldn't be getting sky replacements. So this is pretty solid. It looks a little bit dull, so we would have to do some global adjustments. The horizon here, there's some mountains in the background that have been mostly faded out. We'll see how that works out in post, compared to Fotello, but mostly all of this is accurate. I'm not seeing any of these white houses getting replaced with blue skies, which, AI has done in the past. AutoHDR specifically has had a real problem with this. And this is where I would have expected AutoHDR to make a mistake, where we have gray skies right next to a white pillar, but it did a pretty good job and didn't get it correct. So it looks like AutoHDR, with their updates, when they claim to have fixed this, they really did. However, it does look like there's a little bit something funky going on with the power lines that are running through here. Not the end of the day, but if I'm going to compare the two, we'll see how Fotello does there. And we're moving on here between the skies. I'm not seeing too many errors that I can complain about. We are getting a little bit of floating artifact here with the trees, but this is also, like I said, something a human editor would do. They would make the same mistakes, kind of a sloppy sky swap. And then we're moving on to the other, photos here. Not bad at all. I'm not really seeing too many mistakes. I would have expected, once again, to be a mistake there. There's not. So AutoHDR really has improved their sky swaps. And yeah, I'm not seeing any mistakes here. So solid work on the sky swaps with AutoHDR. Let's look at FOTELLO and see how they did. All right, these look to be in a different order for some reason. But anyway, we'll start with this. This is where I would have expected, once again, if an AI was going to make a mistake or a human editor was going to make a mistake, they would have made it right here on this pillar. The power lines here are retained well. And I am noticing that there's not as much haloing. Man, for some reason, this tree is giving both of the editors issues where it looks like it's creating some artifacts of some kind. So, that is that. But let's move on to see, did FOTELLO make any mistakes? I am noticing that every once in a while, between the two, there are going to be some strange verticals. It doesn't seem to be more significant between either of them. It just happens at random. And it happens maybe, 1 to 2% of the time. But here's, again, what's a little bit of a hazy thing that we have going on with FOTELLO that I haven't seen with AutoHDR. So the haze on the exteriors needs to be fixed. Once again, here's a little bit of a haze. And this is the exteriors on the other house. No mistakes by FOTELLO that I'm seeing. The tree lines are acceptable. And I wouldn't say that there's too much wrong there. This seems to have a little bit more life. So it looks like when AutoHDR is getting better exteriors in general, in some cases, the oversaturation on FOTELLO is doing it some favors, like when we have a gray sky day here. A big thing I am noticing here is the horizon is retained a lot better on these sky swaps for drone shots. That is exactly the skyline around here. That's Pilot Mountain and Saratown Mountain. That's where my vacation rental is. And the whole area does like to see. The horizon's a little bit crooked here, but once again, simple edit, and that is that. So that is what we're seeing so far between the two. I want to go ahead and start filling in some of these points here. So for exteriors, I would give AutoHDR the best on that, and FOTELLO, I would give them a 2. I have said that human, for some reason, outsourcers have a really hard time doing exteriors. If you find a good human outsourcer that can do exteriors, they're usually getting it wrong, and sky swaps especially, they're not doing great. Interiors, I'm going to give AutoHDR last place for that because humans do a pretty good job with the interiors, but I'm going to give actually a 3 to FOTELLO because I do believe they do better than human, and I've said that before. And you may be like, Jonathan, there's no way, but think about when humans and outsourcers are using the pin tool and they're slicing off faucets on the sink or hand towels, that sort of thing. They're really getting some weird things. But the patchiness and the inconsistency of the colors is really killer. And that's what's, really putting AutoHDR below even a human editor in some situations. All right, so masking. I would say that FOTELLO does an excellent job here. I would put humans down. No, the patchiness of their masks on their walls is just killing them. So I'm going to give them a 1 and the humans a 2. The color accuracy, once again, AutoHDR is definitely in last there. I'm going to give amazing work to FOTELLO again. Humans, I find that human editors, while they may get some of the easy ones, the funky colors, you never know what you're getting from a human editor. So even with the funky colors and the regular colors, FOTELLO is doing great. And this is the difficult colors again. So let me just think about the color accuracy of regular walls. On the easy edit, Auto HDR missed, okay, pretty hard. Human editor would have gotten that, and Fotello did a great job. With the difficult colors, Auto HDR was still struggling, and Fotello did a great job. Human editors would have also struggled. I'm going to give Auto HDR 1 there, human there. So the color actually it ends up being the same. All right, wood tones, we haven't gotten to that yet. And then hallucinating reliability, we'll fill in all of this later. But so far, this is where we're at. We're at Auto HDR with a 10, Fotello with a 19, and humans with a 13. All right, so let's go back to our comparisons here. We have already done funky color tests, luxury edit tests, sky replacements, and twilight conversions I'm going to come back to because that's a secondary thing. And then, okay, wood grain test. That's what we want to do next. All right. So here's the exteriors of the wood grain. We're just going to flip through these. I will say that the highlights here were lost a little bit, but this is going to be a very, very difficult comparison here because this house is just ugly. I'm not going to lie. A little bit overexposed for sure. We would probably need to edit this ourselves. And it looks like the camera was set to too slow of a shutter speed. Or maybe Auto HDR messed up there with not aligning it. We'll see how Fotello does. This is acceptable of a drone shot, kind of a useless shot because the house is just in there, but it's something we had edited. We'll notice that the horizon here is looking a little bit funky, and I do say that Fotello does a little bit better horizons with their drones. But these shots are kind of, all right, so here's what we are looking for. Wood tones are very difficult to get right. And it comes down to reds and oranges. If there's ever a mistake with your wood tones, or almost any image you have with a camera, it's going to usually be the reds. That is the usual suspect. So what we're looking for here is even reds and also yellows, and I find that shifting those towards an orange gets a very natural wood tone. The window pulls are looking okay here. Is a little bit, the windows were nasty at this house. But let's just flip through this where we're getting some pretty good wood tones on the walls and the ceilings, but it's looking extra faded here. And it's definitely inconsistent between the corner and the middle of the floor. This is Auto HDR. Moving through here, we're also getting, in my opinion, some color casting here in the back. But like I said, frankly, this is just an ugly house, but it's a great test house. The wood here looks a lot better than it did in the image before. But the problem is that they're not looking the same in between the two images. So either I would like the floor to be this lighter yellow color or this color in the corner, but not both. Moving through, I do feel like there's a lot of green shade coming through the window here and showing up in the final image. And also, my gosh, we need to clean our lenses or something because this is looking extra dusty. So really giving the AI edits something to work with here. And this is just a difficult room. It's dark. It's a bathroom. The colors, it's getting reflected off a white wall, but there's green out there. It looks, man, it's a difficult room. So I'm not gonna kill Auto HDR too much for getting that, but they missed it a little bit. Here's a second version of it. They got the colors a little bit better. We'll see. Man, this really should have been shot on a tripod. My employee who shot this does like to shoot handheld, and this is just potentially an issue with the alignment. Okay, so this is looking better, but here is something I'm seeing with Auto HDR that seems to be a pattern. And they share, anytime you see someone promoting Auto HDR, one of their affiliates or something, their walls are white. So that tells me that they're aware that their color editing is not good because they never share and advertise their color things. Anyway, this room, this looks good. This is what the rest of the log cabin should have looked like so far. So we're getting some strong sunlight coming in and retaining that nice strong sunlight by being bounced around through those white walls of ceiling. And it's getting a lot better. I will say that the floors in between these two photos are inconsistent. And in this situation, we're getting a lot of green. Just remember this photo, a lot of green color casting moving through here. This is starting to look a little bit hazy, and moving forward, this is a lot more red than the other rooms. This room also hazy. And then we're getting back to the exteriors. And while Auto HDR usually does do good exteriors, this is a separate. Okay. So this exterior is not typical of Auto HDR. It has real struggles here. Clearly, the masking is off on this. Heavy green color casting, but like I said, this is a tough house and a tough shoot. So I'm not going to crucify Auto HDR for that one image, because for their exteriors, mostly, they've been doing just fine. And some more trouble here with the exteriors. Starting to bring them down. We didn't need to shoot all this and then trash, not all HDR's fault. But that is Auto HDR. We're still getting a lot of overexposure here. And yeah, that's another nasty place. All right, so let's see how Fotello did with this. And all of these, once again, are unedited. Okay, so we're getting a lot more even wood tones so far. Yeah. There's a little bit of a difference between this corner and the middle, but it is a lot more natural here and accurate. So the floors, I would say, are a lot more of a yellow wood than a red wood, like the ceilings. But the thing is, Fotello just gets it accurate and even. The window pulls are also looking solid. I will say that this is a little bit lighter than it should be. The green color casts that we were seeing in Auto HDR are also here in Fotello, but the rest of the image is super strong. All I'd have to do to get this perfect is bring down the curves a little bit and we'll be fine. This photo is coming out a lot more red than the rest. Well, no, not really. We're just really more so focusing on the chimney there. But the wood tones, which is a very difficult thing to get right, is correct. And I'm not going very easy on the AI softwares here. I'm also noticing that we haven't seen any fuzziness with the auto bracketing alignment. This window was a real issue for Auto HDR, not with Fotello. Once again, a nasty, dirty lens. We got to clean our equipment next time. And this is that same room. Looks like we took 2 photos. So the shooter knew that this was difficult. But I will say both of them missed this. So there's no question there. But Fotello, you need to add back some saturation and some contrast, lower the curves a little bit. I'm not going to choose a winner based off of that photo. This photo was really unsharpened and not aligned. And it looks like there's a little bit of funkiness going on, but it's definitely not misaligned. So alignment is something that did really well. And here's a second shot where it really got it right. So it looks like he took 2 shots there. Oh, you know what must have happened? The shutter might have been opened longer. And that's why Fotello did 2 different shots, because it was longer than 2 seconds of a bracket. But we got one result back that was really good. And this is the easy shot that Auto HDR really killed. And then this is... So look how even the floors are between these 2 images. And the rest of the house is just consistent. Look, between the 2 different rooms, we have that shade of wood, and we're moving quickly to that, and it's the same shade. Broken blinds here. But the window pulls are also pretty strong. Let's look at the exteriors here for this difficult. I'm just going to skip through these basements and move to the exteriors. Okay, so even on the difficult ones, there's no masking errors here. This house does just have a ton of color and green casting. As you guys have seen, it's just having a super bright sun go through a super green canopy, and it looks like both the AI has some green shade to it. But apart from that, I am seeing that on a whole for this shoot, Fotello did better with the exteriors in the difficult situation. The thing that Fotello is still having a little bit of struggle with is this fuzziness that they're getting only on their exteriors that I'm seeing. So moving back here, we can still see some fuzziness here. So I'm not sure why their model does that, but overall, Fotello did better with this exterior. Yeah, you can also remember the beginning shots of the Auto HDR. It was completely, yeah. So Auto HDR did not as well on these exterior shots for this shoot. And I'm also seeing some better horizons from the weird drone shots. All right, so that's mostly wood tones that I wanted to cover there. So let's go ahead and go back to the AI comparison. Wood tones, I'm going to give to Fotello, but I am going to give Auto HDR a 2 on this because I struggle with human editors and outsourcers. Anytime I deliver a wood tone edit to them, they just seem to miss it every time. So I am actually going to say that Auto HDR, while didn't doing it as perfect as I would like, in fact, they still missed it pretty, they missed it, okay? They didn't miss it as bad as humans. But the Fotello, wow. And if you guys need to make an adjustment to that, you have a nice even image where you can do that. All right, so consistency, hallucinating we haven't gotten to yet. Consistency, I will give Fotello a 3 for that. And also Auto HDR, you guys miss it consistently. I mean, I can count on you guys missing. If I'm going to deliver a day's shoots to you guys, 4 to 6 shoots a day, I can count on at least half of them having some major issues, which means I'm going to spend more time editing and fixing their mistakes than I would from a human editor. So I'm going to have to give you guys a 1 there, and we're going to give human editors, a 2, because I do feel like Fotello's model is a lot more consistent than even human. Reliability. What I mean by reliability compared to consistency is, are these people going to be available? Auto HDR and Fotello are always going to be available. Human editors, whether it be a power outage or a holiday, they're not as dependable. So I'm going to give them a 1, and then I'm going to give Auto HDR and Fotello a 2, tied there. Speed. When I submitted all of these things here, I was actually getting Fotello's back before Auto HDR, and I had them quality checked and reviewed before I ever got Auto HDR's back. And Auto HDR never sent me any email for the completion of any of their edits. I actually had to check the my account inside Auto HDR, and I saw that they were there, in about 35 minutes. But Fotello, I was getting some of the shoots back completed in about 5 minutes. And before, like I said, these were even finished in the half hour of all of these shoots, I had gone through and kind of reviewed all of this. Anyway, so Fotello is going to get 3, Auto HDR is going to get 2, and human editors don't take as long. Text and details we haven't gotten to yet. Revision, we're going to talk about sky replacements. I really do feel like this is a tie across the board. I'm not in love with any of their sky replacements, which is why up to this point I've actually done all the sky replacements still in-house, because what they really need is a mask that's a gradient mask along the horizon to get the exact results that you want. Check out my YouTube video on how to do sky replacements. Twilight conversions we haven't gotten yet, and we haven't seen the sign-up process, the ease of use, in-app editing, or any of this company stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about some of these extra things with the texts, the hallucinating, and everything else, because you guys are going to see some interesting details here. Let's check out the twilight conversions of the Auto HDR, Fotello, and virtual staging. So something that I misunderstood was that Fotello has an editing for twilight shots, not for twilight conversions. So I gave them a daylight shoot and had them convert it, and I'm not sure what happened there. But this isn't a conversion at all. They don't offer conversions, okay? So they're just disqualified because they don't even offer it. So that's that. Let's look at the editing for twilight conversions for Auto HDR. So this is what you get when you have, and this is super quick. This is a lot faster than the model that does their regular editing, but you can see that this is really gorgeous. The tone and everything is super pretty, but the longer I looked at it, the more issues I saw with it. And I'm actually going to open up Auto HDR and show you some things here. So and my first impression of this is, wow, that is a very like good taste, very pretty. Like they nailed the overall mood of the Twilights. But one thing I noticed, for example, is the number on the house, it should be 510. This is a classic of hallucinating, a thing that happens with AI when they hallucinate stuff. And I'm not sure if this should be here, but there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe a handle and a deadbolt. I'm not sure what the other two things are. We're going to take a closer look at this. And in order to compare these two, we're going to need to go into AutoHDR and see the befores and afters. So here is how you select the Twilight. You do have to pay extra for the Twilight by using credits, but I can turn this on or off, so it's restoring the original here. You can see 510, and this is where what it looks like. Once again, they replaced the skies here. I'm not in love with this sky replacement. I would have rather had the natural skies. Anyway, if I press Twilight, they've already processed this, so I'm just flipping in between the two. We start to see some important differences. First of all, the 510 is gone, and they've added some deadbolts, but also this texture here is starting to look a little bit funky. The grass looks a little bit wavy. There's some artifacts and spots appearing in the grass that I don't think were there, and this is why we have to flip back in between the two. They're not there, okay? And the deadbolts I don't think are there. And also, this is a white brick house. When you turn on the Twilight, it doesn't look like the same brick, or it looks like a type of stone facade. You know what I'm talking about? So I started getting a funky feeling. Let's look at, not that one. We'll come back to that one. This one here. So this is the Twilight. Once again, the overall mood is really nice. The windows are really clean. But when I switch this from the original photo, look closely, okay? Because I almost didn't catch it myself. Once again, have a nice white brick here. Notice the cars here, and then we can see the houses here. We have some Amazon boxes. We have these chairs, lots of windows with blinds in them. And anyway, let's switch to Twilight. The texture of all of the house, this looks like a stone facade now, like the skinny stones that you can have on the exterior of homes versus a brick. The chairs are completely changed. They have removed fixtures from the side of the house. Notice, focus on this side of the house. The neighborhood house is gone. The car is gone. The Amazon boxes have changed. The tree line has changed over here. Once again, it's flipping in between the two. So all of this has changed, including details of the house. So this, the blinds in the windows, even the fixtures along the wall, and most importantly, the brick of the entire house. So if I were to possibly try to complain about this, I might have a case for misrepresentation of the house. I understand that sometimes we replace the skies, but frankly, when you replace the skies, it's not changing anything of the structure of the house. That's just what the house would look like on a different time of day, right? But this is changing the house itself, including the outside and inside details. And I was wondering how different this could be. So I looked back at this image and noticed again, man, so 510, that's what it should be, but they've completely hallucinated the numbers there. Let's see if it can get, so the reason I did this next image was to see if they could get the text right, the numbers right there. So I did this image, and here up close, it did get the numbers correctly, and it also fixed the deadbolt and the handle here. Let's just compare this between the two. But that's a different deadbolt on the house. And I'm also noticing the textures are changing here. This brick is still different brick, but it completely changes from brick to stone. Also, on the original photo, this is more of like a vine that used to be there that left some root stain. But now on this, they've changed it to a wire. They're changing things. And you might think, it's not that important. But then it really hit me. Notice the difference between these two images. You have a house here that's zoomed out, is showing the sky. Notice this landscaping here and the two windows. My image isn't even zoomed out that far. The landscaping is completely different. The windows also are different from the actual house. This twilight isn't even my image. This is a new creation based off of my old image. And most importantly, if we look at the actual house here, we have one window here and a separation, and then a double window. If we go to the twilight version here, it's just showing two single windows that are right beside. It's changing the very structure of the house in a major way, an immense way, to where if a buyer were looking at this and we're getting through the process, this is definitely, in my opinion, misrepresentation, and you could definitely get your clients in trouble and possibly yourself in trouble, although it would most likely be your clients. But more importantly, the consequences for AI in general could be huge, because this is going to scare people from having AI being used in industries like real estate, where we have to have accurate representations of the things we're shooting. Once again, the landscape completely has changed here, and the house has changed in addition to fixtures and textures on the houses. So I looked back at a lot of the things that AutoHDR had edited. It does not do this on your usual edits. It only does this on anything that it stages virtually or does virtual twilights up. And that's where we're going to go ahead now to the virtual staging. I don't believe I saw any virtual staging options for Fotello, but this is the image that we did with AutoHDR. And I just want to go ahead and notice the floor is getting that AI regeneration look. And I started looking at things a little bit closer. First of all, the placement isn't horrible for the virtual staging, but it probably wouldn't be placed there exactly. But anyway, here's what I want to look at. This is a standard door where there's usually, two squares on top, in the middle, and below. They have changed the squares. The flowers here that were yellow flowers are completely changed because the AI, the text on the book. But most importantly, I only did one virtual staging, so it's not like I did a ton of them and looked for problems. I did 3 twilights. All of them had some pretty serious, at least some concerns to very major concerns. And then this one, let me open it up in AutoHDR. Once we flip between the two, let's see, here we go. We had the easy test, and I did staging on one of them. I think it was this one. Yes. Okay. So look closely here. First of all, this is pretty hazy, the result. But I did a staging your space. It goes very quickly when you've already done it. This fixture here doesn't exist, right? So it's adding fixtures here. And I imagine if I were to do more than just one test, we would also see these hallucinations between the other edits. Also, looking out the windows here, notice how the view out the window completely changes. Now it's still green here, but what would happen if we had a house? Would the house and the look of the neighborhood also change? There's some real questions here that we have to consider that really raise some concerns for me here. And these are also, if I'm going to go here and click staging, you can remove existing furniture, add furniture. Also, check this out. It does this. I can't test this, but okay, yes, I can. Notice when I'm changing between even their previews, the exterior of the house changes quite a bit. In addition to the ratio of the interior, the fixtures have changed slightly, even in their examples. So this is definitely something that happens. If I'm going to add furniture, notice how much everything changes. The doorway changes, and this is the edits, the examples they're using for representation here. And this is not in beta or anything. There's no warning here. There should be a giant warning label on this, in my opinion. So anyway, let's take this back to the rating system here. So hallucinating. Generally speaking, with most of the straight edits, AutoHDR doesn't hallucinate. Human edits will never do that, so I'm giving them a 3. But I'm going to give Fotello a 2 because I've still not seen any hallucinating. And AutoHDR a last place, but that is, I will say, only with their virtual staging and their virtual twilights. Text and details. Humans never get this wrong because they don't change those sorts of things. But the text and detail, I'm going to give, they got a little bit of haziness on their exteriors, and AutoHDR does pretty well. I don't see too much haze on their exteriors or interiors, but their text and details does hallucinate. I'm going to give this a tie. So I'm going to give them both 1s and the humans a 2. Revisions, we haven't done that. Twilight conversions, we can talk about that. Humans are going to win here. Okay, humans still got the upper hand over AI, no question. Fotello doesn't have one. I imagine if you ask them to give you a Twilight conversion, no, I don't. They only fix what's if an AI makes a mistake. But AutoHDRs is, in my opinion, unusable. Like, once again, even though Fotello doesn't even have an option, they're not doing one that's going to backfire on you. So I'm going to give you a 1 on this purely because the AutoHDR one is dangerous, not only for us as photographers, but for AI as a developing industry. It could really give all of AI a really bad name if there was to get some type of case against you. And I really find AutoHDR to be a little bit fast and loose with their development. When they released, they didn't have any terms and conditions. And now they have terms and conditions, but you kind of got to go looking for it. I'll show you that in a second. And then we have the revisions. Okay, so the revision capability here, and then the user experience and company we're going to talk about. So if you need a revision in AutoHDR, let's just say I can choose one here. They do have a human edit option. So what you have to do, though, to use the human edit is you have to add editors, and it's going to take you to your account settings, and you have to add your human in the loop. Now, some of you guys are going to like this, where you can actually hire your own editor and integrate them into it. So you just have to add your editor's email and then add your editor, and then that's going to be worked into your workflow. So that can work, but you're going to have to do a little bit of training with your own editor. With Fotello, if you have an edit that needs to be done, I'm just going to open up this here. This is an edit that we pulled from a still from a video, by the way. If you need something, you can just click this. Did the AI make a mistake? And then have a human editor revise that. And that comes for free with editors that are already trained by Fotello and provided. I do find that to be super easy, and it's free. With your human in the loop, you're already going to have to pay your own editor to be involved there in some way, but also set it up yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and give revision there a little bit higher for Fotello. Human revision, man, it can be difficult. I'm going to give, if there's a revision needed by the human editor, the outsourcers, you never know if they're going to even be able to read or listen to what you're saying because of the language barrier. So I'm going to give them a tie for first place there, and then a 1 for AutoHDR. Now, the user experience. I will say the sign-up process, just reviewing the general thing for AutoHDR, I love their website. I can't get over this really cool entrance here. And If your guys are joining up here, you can just drag and drop your photos and then make your account. It is as seamless as it can possibly be to join. Now, Fotello has been getting some feedback that's pretty negative because you have to kind of make an account. But now, as long as you are set up for 75 listings a month or less, you can join automatically. If you're above that, they still want you to create an appointment with them, but they have now listened to your feedback and made it simple for you to join. It's still, I would say, not as seamless as AutoHDR. So AutoHDR is doing really well there. And then if you're going to hire a human editor, man, finding a quality human editor is a nightmare. So they get last. AutoHDR is going to get second there, and the sign-up process for AutoHDR is going to get a third. Ease of use, I really do like that AutoHDR, you drag and drop it, and everything is automatically done in one step. When I'm with Fotello, if I submit a listing, I do have to select exteriors and interiors. It's a little bit clunky. Now, the results are fantastic, but the ease of use isn't quite as good. So I'm going to go once again here to the ease of use and give a tie to AutoHDR and the human editors, because once you have a human editor that knows what you like, just sending the images to them is pretty easy. And then we have Fotello coming in last. They have some work there to be done. In-app editing, this is not something, frankly, I even want to do. I just want to submit my photos and then download whatever the result is and then fix it in Lightroom. But these guys do have in-app editing. Let me go to some of my listings. There's different styles for Fotello where you can choose some presets. I mean, that's nice. Not too important to me necessarily. Like I said, I don't want to spend any time in the software. And then you can change quite a bit with the exposure, temperature, highlights, tone. Definitely not as much as you can in Lightroom, which is where I want to work anyway. But you can also add personalized TV screens. They're putting this as a beta. And apparently the reason why it is beta is because it takes a little bit of time to populate. But it automatically senses all of your fireplace, your TV screens. The fireplace, I do believe you have to put that in manually, and then you have did the AI make a mistake that you can submit to a human editor. The AutoHDR in-app editing, let me go to some of my listings here and just choose, please, not the wood tone test, the realistic test. So if I wanted to adjust some things, we can change, the brightness and the contrast. I'm not loving the way that looks, but most importantly, I don't even want to edit any of this. There's less that you can do here, all right? And you can turn off the clouds, it looks like. So you can change the clouds, but it's still replacing the skies. I do like when they add the clouds, how wispy and nice that the clouds look. Anyway, so that's what the exterior in-app editing looks like. I'm going to give, and with the humans, you can't really do anything. So they're really disqualified from this. But I will do Fotello 3 here and 2 here and just give, participation trophy to the humans. Now the company, the terms and conditions. Let's look at AutoHDR. So looking at the terms and conditions, if you want to see the terms of use, you scroll down to the bottom and it should be in the footer. That's where it should be. It's not here. You have to go to, I guess, your account, manage account. No, that's not where it is. Contact. Yeah, here it is. And then you have to go to knowledge base and AutoHDR for privacy policy. So it's all the way down here. And this is kind of what we have. It seems very half-baked, and we're pretty far. Here we go. So here's the AutoHDR fulfilling possible security, business address, legal and export instructions, refund policy. It's all here. This is a very weird way to put it. Not crazy about it. If you go to Fotello and you need the terms and conditions, you scroll down on the website and they're all here, terms and conditions. And this looks a lot more standard and like they actually ran at least by, it's a little bit not as official as I've seen other things, but it looks a lot more legal than otherwise, and it's easy to find. Anyway, so legal, I'm going to give also humans have none, and who knows what they're doing overseas with your images. So that's a 3, 2, leadership. Let's go ahead and talk about the leadership a little bit between all of these and the partnerships and the trustworthiness. So the leadership between FOTELLO and AutoHDR, we have Matt with AutoHDR, and we have Harmon and his partner with FOTELLO. The way that the whole business is structured, first of all, with FOTELLO, is something I like to see. That's where you have the owners who really believe in their product and they're taking on all the risk themselves and fighting to win in the marketplace. AutoHDR, from what I have seen, especially since their launch, they had to have known the differences between what they were saying their product was capable of and what the actual ability was. And I'm also seeing a lot of inconsistencies, even when they share a lot of their images, where they're sharing images that, I'm sorry, I don't believe personally that the results that I'm seeing haven't been quality checked and fixed in post. I don't see the type of results we're getting in the actual software. FOTELLO, I do see that. The leadership, I don't know. It just seems like Matt is trying to sell us. He has also partnered with people who have a reputation for selling things hard as well, rather than presenting a quality product and letting the product kind of speak for itself. Now, humans, leadership, man, goodness. Everyone knows dealing with outsourcers overseas can be a nightmare 99% of the time. So I can give humans last place, leadership for AutoHDR a 2, and FOTELLO is definitely a 3 there. Partnerships, I touched on that a little bit, but FOTELLO doesn't have any partnerships. AutoHDR is partnered with a lot of people, and these people are going to promote AutoHDR to the masses, not because it's a quality software and deserves it necessarily. I mean, I don't want to say AutoHDR is a bad software, but they're presenting it as, oh, it is so good, when there are definitely better options out there. So the partners are, and this is something I couldn't sleep at night if I was one of these guys. They're pushing and promoting a product purely because they have a market share and a profit share of some kind with that promotion. So, and you might say, oh, Jonathan, look at you at FOTELLO. I get nothing back from FOTELLO. I have literally, looking back at my YouTube channel, guys, I do these types of things just so that everybody can know what the best is, whether it be editors, scheduling software, or whatever. So no, FOTELLO doesn't have partnerships. They're just creating the best product. And I do feel like all the things you hear about AutoHDR are at least very biased and at most compromised. With human editors, there's no partnerships there at all. I guess I'll give a 3 to humans, a 2 to FOTELLO, and partnerships 1. Trustworthiness. I'm going to give a copy and paste of what Matt sent to me of all the updates they had given. They had definitely made some improvements on the masking and the sky swaps with AutoHDR on their second release. But the base model, the fundamental, most important model where we're talking about verticals, window pulls, and color casting, the color casting, which is easily the single most important thing, maybe window pulls also is right there neck and neck with that, but they're really missing the color casting and the color management of even easy shoots. So saying that they're really ready and they've got a fantastic thing that's competing in the market, in my opinion, is not honest. So I'm going to give them a 1. I'm going to say human is a 2, or man, dude, outsource is a lie. Gosh, I'm going to put, I'm going to give them a tie, okay, for that. And I'm going to give FOTELLO a 2 because they have given nothing, in my opinion, but honest feedback. And when I grill Harmon, or even in private, about, hey, man, why is this in beta? He'll say, listen, it's slow. You know, admittedly, it's slow. If you try to do this thing, it's slow. But they're not bringing anything to market that doesn't work and work very well. So they may not have twilight conversions, and they may not do automatic virtual staging, but isn't hallucinating and regenerating your image and potentially putting your clients and you at risk for misrepresentation, which is just slightly important. Am I right? So the trustworthiness is really good there. Also, we have to go back to AutoHDR. You have to wonder, with these features that AutoHDR is just packing into their software, I'm getting a feeling like these twilights are something that you can kind of just run through ChatGPT or other third-party open source types of software. And it's making me wonder, did AutoHDR even write the code for this? Or are they just taking a model and plugging it into their software? And then you have to pay for that as well, because all of the twilight conversions and the virtual staging, you have to pay for with credits. I don't know, guys. It just seems like on lots of angles, whether it is the main model or the extra stuff, Fotello is doing better. Now, they didn't receive a perfect score. They didn't win out on everything. Their exteriors need to work on some of the haze and the oversaturation. So looking at between AutoHDR and Fotello here, Fotello really seems to be progressing slowly and methodically and putting stuff out there when it works. And even when something works pretty well, but it's slow, they're putting a beta tag on it. So if Fotello is saying something works, I can really trust them. But let's go ahead and decide winners between AutoHDR and Fotello. How I'm going to do this is, let's look at price real quick. Pricing for AutoHDR, if you're doing, you get 10 photos a month for free, which is nothing. But if you're doing 5 photos a month, I can't change this very well. You're going to get around, 50 cents an image. People don't like necessarily Fotello's way of pricing, but for us photographers that do a lot of shoots and have real work, the way I do the 75 listings a month. And for me, that's $12 per listing. And I did do the yearly, so I saved 25%. That comes out at about 30 cents an image for me. So it does depend on your volume. You guys are just going to have to do the calculations. So with this, I didn't really give a rating because it's going to depend, and it's not going to be a deal breaker here. But anyway, let's look at the final results here between AutoHDR, Fotello, and Human. It looks like Fotello really came out ahead, and Humans still came out ahead, but over AutoHDR. And I think that is being generous. I don't think AutoHDR is frankly close in a lot of areas that are very important. But let's look at Fotello and just see where they're matching up here. I'm going to make this very binary, 0 or 1. So with this, we've got a 0 for both of them because they tied. And then I'm moving on to the next thing, another tie. And I'm just going to fast forward through all of this so you guys can see the final results here. So I'm going to go ahead and share this document with you guys in the description as well. There's going to be lots of things you guys can check out on your own. But when comparing AutoHDR and Fotello and just providing the software either a 0 or a 1, making it completely binary here based off of who won the category, we have Fotello doing an almost complete shutout. The only things that AutoHDR did better than Fotello was exteriors. I would give AutoHDR the win on that on most exteriors. Like Fotello did better with that one difficult house, but for the rest of them, Fotello has that hazy result in some of the green shadowy areas. So AutoHDR didn't, so they won that. But the only other thing that AutoHDR won out on was the sign-up process and the ease of use. As far as quality, though, it was a complete shutout or tie for Fotello. So Fotello has tied on verticals, tied on window pulls, but color casting is a big difference in them, and that's going to be the primary thing that they win on. But exteriors, AutoHDR won on. But interiors, masking, color accuracy, difficult colors, wood tones, hallucinating, consistency, speed, and revision capabilities all were won by Fotello. The ties go to vertical window pulls, reliability, text and details, and sky replacement and twilight conversion. The twilight conversion, because FOTELLO doesn't have it, but AutoHDR has something that I wouldn't use. So at the end of the way, they both get no points, and I would leave that to the human editors. But anyway, yeah, FOTELLO wins out in my opinion, and I wouldn't even say this is an opinion anymore. This is quantifiable and verifiable. If you guys disagree, feel free to leave so in the comments. If you guys appreciate the level of detail I'm going into this, let me know. And if you guys know of another AI software that's worth trying out or comparing, I do feel like AutoHDR is being included here purely because they're marketed so much, not because they stand out from the other AI software that's available. The only software as of now, and this is being recorded on June 30th, 2025, FOTELLO is the premier AI real estate photography software, bar none, and it's not even close. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave it down there. And don't forget to check out Real Estate Media Hero if you want a quality scheduling software and real estate photography masterclass if you want to learn from someone like me. Looking forward to it, and thank you guys very much.